Good morning, good afternoon, good whenever you are listening. We are back. 2 pylon dons, 2 haircuts. I forgot we do YouTube and I did not shave, so excuse my appearance. But you are back with the freshly faded fantasy football podcast. 2 hosts, 2 cuts. If you can't tell, I haven't drank enough coffee today. Getting to the point. My name is Ben Weiner. His name is AJ Carrion. We're talking about fantasy football and nothing more in regards to men's hairstyles. AJ, how you doing?
I'm doing good. It was a Monday for sure, but I got to go play basketball outside. The weather in New York was insanely warm. It's going to get colder, of course, but it was nice to sort of seize the day, be in Central Park. People were out and about, even though I ended up getting rained on my walk back from the courts. But I had a pretty good day.
Did you get rained on the courts? Were you like just catching buckets also?
No. It was a little too windy, so it was a whole lot of defense and fast breaks, and it was good cardio and a good reminder that I should probably go on a run sometime soon.
Well, if it's going to remind you that you need to go on a run, that's definitely less incentive for me to come along as much as I like playing basketball, because I hate reminders that I need to get on a treadmill. Dude, I'm so pumped. Believe it or not, to all the listeners out there, AJ and I, we do things together that aren't related to fantasy football, and tomorrow night we're seeing The Batman. So no spoilers, please. But by the time you guys see this episode, we will probably have seen it. So definitely feel free to DM us and ask us our opinion about the movie. Along with anything related to fantasy football, we're always around to chat. We have a jam-packed show today. We are discussing NFL Combine risers and fallers. But before we get into that, we have 2 brief topics we need to touch upon. 2 like the Tyreek Hill peace sign. Also, fun fact on Sleeper, you can make players' nicknames emojis, so I always recommend making Tyreek Hill the peace. But first things first, we got to talk about this Calvin Ridley news. Calvin Ridley suspended from the NFL for 1 year for gambling. Of course, everyone has their own opinions on whether the suspension is just or in line with other NFL rule violations and whatnot. But as per usual, AJ and I do a really strong job, we think, of keeping things fantasy football related. So save your opinions. We're talking about fantasy. AJ, what is your reaction to this Calvin Ridley news in regards to fantasy football?
So a lot of the initial reaction is people going to be super, super high on Kyle Pitts. And I get it. No target competition. But I think when you spend the 4th overall pick on a tight end, there shouldn't be worries about target competition. I think coming in at year 2, even with the full expectation that Calvin Ridley is going to be playing NFL football, I was fully convinced and ready to anoint Kyle Pitts a top 3 tight end. It could hurt him if he does end up getting guys like Jalen Ramsey or getting tons of defensive attention. And I do think Atlanta's now in this weird position where, honestly, they've got a lot of holes on this roster. I could now see them, with this news, bringing back a guy like Cordero Patterson to really take the load off of these inexperienced wideouts.
Super interesting. Totally a possibility. Not foreign to this show is at times AJ and I won't see eye to eye. Shocker, I know. But I actually have a couple different ideas from this, to be honest. One thing I feel really good about, actually, is I think Atlanta may now look into an offensive weapon at 8, which I know would be very aggressive for a team with an aging quarterback going back-to-back years. Tight end at 4, wide receiver at 8, especially with a defense and an offensive line that leaves a lot to be desired. My logic for this is I think they're going to want to support Matt Ryan as much as they can, as he's been the consummate professional, never requested a trade, never trying to leave Atlanta. He's riding it out, and they're going to do everything they can to put Matt Ryan in the best chance to lose another NFC divisional game. That's what Atlanta is in the business of doing. They want to get Matt Ryan to the playoffs. The division is as weak as it's ever been with no Tom Brady. Alvin Kamara is currently going through a court case. The Carolina Panthers haven't changed very much. So I actually could be very into the idea of Atlanta taking a receiver at 8, even to ideally set up that next quarterback of the future. If in 2023, if it doesn't work out, then a CJ Stroud or a Bryce Young comes into town throwing to Kyle Pitts and, I don't know, Drake London, that could be a really exciting offense and a great opportunity for a young quarterback to start off. But I also totally agree with you. There never should have been concerns about Kyle Pitts' volume in the first place. He is locked into 140 targets as the day is long.
Precisely.
Two different perspectives. both totally reasonable. What will happen remains to be seen. But AJ, how do you value Calvin Ridley right now? Is there any lessons you learned from this situation? And do you think he will play again?
Sometimes chasing the buy low can really bite you in the behind. That's definitely something that I've learned. Sometimes the guy's low for a good reason. And with somebody like Calvin Ridley, I saw people prior to this news talking about how, oh, you could maybe trade a late 1 or an early 2 for Calvin Ridley, and your return on investment could potentially be phenomenal. But if you were somebody that opted to go that route and say you traded a late 1 or an early 2 for Calvin Ridley, or you pieced together a package of proven or semi-proven assets to go get a guy that could potentially be the wild card that swings you into a championship caliber roster, you're hurting pretty bad. So I would definitely say that patience is a virtue. Sometimes you got to just let things play out. I mean, we obviously still don't know the full story behind his mental health battles. This is still bad news regardless, and it's really going to severely impact his stock. He is like 27 years old. Like he's not a young guy. He's going to come back after this year-long suspension, not having played NFL football for almost 2 full seasons. And at that point, I'm not willing to take that risk on personally.
I think that this is just a testament to trying to avoid guys where there's any sort of controversy, to be frank. This is why I was out on Michael Thomas last year. This is why I traded away Calvin Ridley in Dynasty. I was able to trade him for Antonio Gibson. And a quick little story, actually. Unfortunately, someone in a league I play in today traded Calvin Ridley. The offer was already sent out for Calvin Ridley, and the other guy happened to accept it. And hate to kick a guy when he's down, but the guy that he traded away was Clyde. And I was like, I think I still prefer the Ridley side of the deal, which obviously I don't, but always some low-hanging fruit to take a piss at Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
We're not strangers to doing that. That's for sure.
So our next topic before we get into the NFL Combine is AJ and I thought we would take 130 seconds or so and tell you guys that we made a dynasty trade. We shook hands and looked each other right in the eyes, and we each kind of liked what we were getting. The league format, it's a 12-team dynasty league. 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end. No premium, no super flex, nothing fancy, just your standard fantasy football lineup in a dynasty format. 4-point passing touchdowns. AJ, would you care to tell the people about your trade with me?
So I acquired Matthew Stafford, Mike Evans, and the 10th overall pick in the upcoming rookie draft for the 9th pick in the 2nd round and Patrick Mahomes, which I gave up. To put it in perspective, Ben is an owner of Tyreek Hill and now arguably owns the most valuable stack in all of fantasy football. And that is really the kicker on this trade. And with a guy like Matthew Stafford, I now have like him and Heineke and Tyler Huntley. So I'm clearly taking the L at QB in a good number of my upcoming season matchups, unless I choose to address the position, which who knows? We got a long off season. We really like to trade. Odds are neither of us own these QBs, but who knows? But
I'm not breaking up this stack for anything
yet.
Short of a brand new Tesla and like maybe the 102. But anyhow, the reason I made this trade is I certainly paid the piper, who in this case was AJ. But I thought it'd be really fun because I have Trey Lance everywhere. And if you guys have been listening to the show, you know how much I believe in Trey Lance as a dynasty quarterback. And to have 2 of my favorite dynasty quarterbacks, having Mahomes and Lance, both under 27 years old, both absolute studs with limitless potential, I just feel so set and comfortable at quarterback. And additionally, I have the 101, so I felt like I was able to lose Mike Evans in the 110 because there could be a certain combine riser, killer transition from your boy, who will be joining my team quite shortly.
Would you like to talk about him? We can just get right into the combine nitty gritty because
let's do it.
Let's do it.
And also, wait, not to victory lap my rankings, which I haven't even released to the public because I kept them private. I made them for myself. I was very happy to see, and I sent these to you today, AJ, that my top 9 players on my big board did not move after the combine. That made me feel like I had a pretty good read on things. So just like a little, And starting with the guy at the top of that list is none other than the 5'11", 217-pound running back out of Iowa State, Mr. Breese Hall. I've been banging the drum. Why not Breese Hall? Certified 101. Guy who broke out as a true freshman in 2019. Over 60 all-purpose touchdowns and over 5,000 all-purpose yards in 3 seasons, one of which was shortened due to coronavirus. We've become lazy and tired in our analysis. We have taken Breese Hall for granted. And frankly, this combine was just the coronation and just the reminder that people needed to know that comparing Breese Hall to the elite Kenneth Walker and the athletic specimen of Isaiah Spiller, regardless of the pedigree of those players, is still just frankly disrespectful. This man ran a 4.39 at 217 pounds, and he jumped 40 inches in the air. That is a higher vertical than Jahan Dotson, Christian Watson, and Treylon Burks. Think about that. This man is an athletic specimen and has done nothing but dominate the Big 12 since we were sophomores in college. This is the guy. He came up, he showed up, he cemented himself. This is it. It's Breese Hall, 101. No questions.
Yeah, and it's been cool to see because people, of course, it's January or February. Fantasy Twitter is an absolute wasteland, and people just like to stir the pot. And I don't know. I was pretty comfortable putting Treylon Burks as my 101, and we'll get into him a little bit later. But it was him and Breese Hall were the two guys.
Those are the two.
And I was telling you, I was like, hey, if you take Breese at 1, that you made the right pick. Either pick is the right pick. And now Breese is the undisputed 101. So you hit the nail on the head with that.
Thank you. And speaking of a potential 101, maybe outside of the fantasy football circle, you want to take it over to quarterback and Malik Willis?
Yeah. So the thing about him and Kenny Pickett is they've been kind of grouped with Matt Corral for quite some time. Those have been the 3 guys, maybe a little Desmond Ridder, Carson Strong, Sam Howell, whatever conversation. But Willis and Pickett, not only with their performances at the Senior Bowl, but now with the Combine, they have 2 pretty much resume adders to their draft profile that Matt Corral no longer has, and that these other quarterbacks have paled in comparison to when compared to Willis and Pickett. But I want to talk about Willis specifically because Willis rushed for 27 touchdowns at Liberty, and despite not running his 40, he did that because he didn't really have to prove anything. Maybe he runs a slow 40 and it hurts his draft stock. But at the end of the day, teams are well aware that this guy can run the football. Whether he runs a fast 40 or not, Dak Prescott didn't run a great 40. Dak Prescott is a damn good running quarterback in the grand scheme of the NFL. And I think Malik Willis is kind of a similar type of running style, maybe a little bit more athletically dependent. But the thing that stood out to me was he made some beautiful throws. There was one that NFL Twitter might have shared.
Yeah, I saw that one.
It was like that 56-yard bomb down the sideline. And that's the type of stuff that really sticks in scouts' heads. And so him being taken at 6 to Carolina or 11 to Washington or even 9 to Denver, those are all very real possibilities after what he did at the Combine. And especially in Superflex formats, you're now going to seriously have to consider spending a pretty decent rookie pick on a guy like Willis if he does end up on one of those teams where there's already somewhat of an established offense and the sky can really be the limit.
Absolutely. I have a question and an objection. Let's start with the question. First, on Superflex, would you say the clear-cut top 3 in pretty much no order, but pretty relative to team need, would be Breese Hall, Treylon Burks, and Malik Willis? Probably with Hall and Willis as the 101, 102, and then Burks is the 3.
I can't say that yet because I do have 1 quarterback rankings and Superflex rankings, and I have really spent more of my time going through my 1 quarterback rankings just because I really, really want to cement my opinion on the skill position players. I do wish I had an answer for you, but as of right now, I can't say where I have Willis in those rankings. He's definitely risen significantly, though.
That's a totally okay. I myself have spent a lot more time on the single quarterback rankings because, to be frank with you, and this is going to lead to my objection, is as good as Malik Willis could be in comparison to his peers, along with Kenny Pickett, in single quarterback dynasty leagues, I'm frankly just not very intrigued by any of these players. I don't think I would really start entertaining Malik Willis in single quarterback formats till the back end of the first round. This is pretty regardless of draft capital for me as well. If the Pittsburgh Steelers traded up to the 101 for Malik Willis, that would be interesting, but we know who this talent is. Like, quarterbacks get draft capital because they're quarterbacks. It is a more valuable position to the NFL team. And in turn, I think that in single quarterback formats, it almost makes draft capital a little less relevant. If that makes sense, like look back, like when they went Burrow, Herbert, and then Tua, tons of people were still taking Tua over Justin Herbert in single quarterback leagues because people disagreed with Herbert going over Tua. Obviously, this has been proven incorrect, but there's just my premise that I don't think that Malik Willis's draft capital will really have a major impact on where I'm willing to take him in single quarterback leagues.
Totally agree. If they really were the guy to consider with a solid rookie pick in single quarterback leagues, we probably would have known like a year ago.
Absolutely. Like Bryce Young next year will be a great guy to consider even in single quarterback leagues. If you're at your 110 and you need a quarterback, fire away by all means. But like Zach Wilson would be the 101 this year over any of these quarterbacks. Mac Jones would be better than any of these quarterbacks. I wouldn't trade Mac Jones for Malik Willis in Dynasty. Sorry, I wouldn't do it. And that could be controversial because I think of last year's quarterbacks. Mac Jones is probably in the bottom half of dynasty value as of today, off the top of my head.
Starters,
yeah, right? Like you'd probably be like 3 or 4 of those guys. So yeah, that's just my stance on the quarterback class, but I definitely agree with you that Malik Willis did have a great combine and definitely boosted his draft stock. Also, as a reminder to the listeners, when we the combine takeaways, the big deal isn't like what someone's 3-cone time was or necessarily how high they can jump. The big thing with combine risers and fallers is how are NFL teams going to perceive these players and where are they going to be drafted and what sorts of opportunities are they going to receive? Like, of course, like it matters that Breese Hall ran a 4.39. Of course it matters because it's boosting his draft stock. But Breese Hall was fast before. So this is fine.
Yeah, it's more just which of these guys are cementing their strengths and which of these guys are unfortunately showing their weaknesses. And that's going to influence where these guys can potentially be taken. What we saw at a Breese Hall means him being taken in the back end of the first round is a very real possibility now. And I couldn't say that with confidence prior to the combine.
Absolutely. And I like the word you said, cementing, because that's going to transition to me into my next winner. And this player has not been applauded as a winner among the fantasy circle. Like you're not seeing on Twitter, oh, Jahan Dotson, big combine winner. And the reason for that, and in turn why I have him as a winner, despite the fact that most don't, is that he took care of business. Jahan Dotson came in and did every single thing expected of him. 5'10", just under 180 pounds, a low 4.4 40 time, a 36-inch vertical jump. He did everything right, just as we've assumed he was going to. And the thing is that a lot of players came in and didn't do these things properly. No spoilers for the fallers, but I think there's one running back that really comes to mind who didn't take care of business. So I wanted to just extend a slight congratulations of sorts to Jahan Dotson because he hasn't came in as a flawless prospect, but he had a great senior year at Penn State. He has unbelievable hands, and he's going to be a popular late round rookie pick. A late first round pick in your rookie drafts this year. And additionally, where he's projected to go in the NFL in the late first round or the early second round, have a lot of good teams with a lot of needs at receiver. I'm looking at you, Buffalo. I'm looking at you, Kansas City. I'm looking at you, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, Tennessee. And any of these places, Jahan Dotson's a really talented guy. He can come in and command targets right away, and he didn't do anything to hurt his chances of that happening this weekend.
Absolutely not. I mean, I've been a Jahan Dotson truther along people's timelines for about 2-3 months now. So it was good to see him not show any red flags. And sometimes all you got to do is show up to the combine and not show any red flags, and that's exactly what he did.
It's funny, though, because I love Dotson, but the next guy that you're going to be talking about, he's creeping up on him in my rankings. Let me tell you, Jahan Dotson can feel this guy. So would you mind talking to the people about Sky Moore?
Yeah, I mean, measuring in at 5'10", 195 pounds, ran a 4.41 35-inch vertical jump, fantastic broad jump. Cones and shuttles were pretty textbook, nothing jumping off the page, but no bad times as far as I can really tell. The 3-cone a little slow. But what Sky Moore proved is that he's an NFL caliber athlete. And that's all he needed to do, because the production profile with Sky Moore was really never the concern. We watched him produce at Western Michigan. Obviously, he was not playing against the Alabamas and the Georgias of the college football universe every single week. But sometimes you don't need to do that to be viewed as an elite prospect. And I'm not saying he's elite just yet, but I feel like a lot of these worries about Sky Moore coming from a small program, being a little bit on the smaller side for a receiver, that kind of got put to bed when he was in the top half of pretty much every combine exercise, save for the 3-cone, and he had phenomenal hands the entire time he was there. So I feel like he could end up very quickly being a day one contributor if he lands in the right receiver room that really needs a guy. JJ Zacharyson actually compared him to DJ Moore / Jarvis Landry. And I think that comp is phenomenal because he really operated out of the slot primarily at Western Michigan. And I think that's exactly what somebody with his physical and performance profile is going to be drafted to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Sky Moore's going to come in and be a day one contributor. Like you said, I actually have him, and this is high. If you want to hear how bullish I am on Sky Moore, I have him as high as 12 on my big board, which is absolutely high. I am not saying that everyone should have him high. This is where I have Sky Moore, just so that's clear. To close out my winner, AJ and I each have one more. I got to talk about Christian Watson. This dude, it seems every time we talk about Christian Watson, we only have nicer things to say than the last time we spoke about him. First, it's the Senior Bowl. Now it's the Combine. And he has just been dominant in every new domino, whether it's the Senior Bowl playing better competition than he's faced when he was at North Dakota State, or coming into the Combine and being every bit as athletic as a Treylon Burks or a Garrett Wilson. He's been unbelievable, and he's proven he can do it against NFL caliber cornerbacks at the Senior Bowl. And he's going to have an outside shot to be a day one pick. He's more likely to come off the board at top half of round 2, but back end of round 1 is certainly not out of question. Came in at 6'4", 208 pounds, ran a sub 4.4, and had a 38.5-inch vertical. What's not to like here?
Yeah, when you're dealing with a guy like Christian Watson who has such a limited amount of production and elite performances on the field, they got to come into the Combine already. The expectation is really high, and you have to break that ceiling. And the fact that he was able to do that, NFL teams are really going to notice that. And I do like what you said. He could be going over some more established prospects like David Bell, for example.
100%. That was actually a flip that I made in my rankings. I have Christian Watson at 11 over Sky Moore, and I have David Bell right at 13. Also, if you guys want AJ and I to do more rankings, this is something that we did briefly last year, and we've kind of gotten away from. But if people enjoy our rankings, let us know, because we will put them out if people want them. Unless you're in our league, your votes don't count, because I'm sure you would want all of our rankings.
Right, so we could get charged a premium on every player we have above consensus. I would love that.
Yeah, if you're a fantasy vetoer and you're listening to this right now, our rankings are only exclusive through our Patreon link. And additionally, there's a league fee tax. But if you're a stranger or a friend who we don't play with, we'd be more than happy to post you a free link to our rankings whenever they are on the internet.
I'm going to keep it moving with the Combine talk.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this next call, by the way. This guy has really been growing on me, and I think he's going to do some really great things. So I'm happy you're bringing him up.
Kenneth Walker, man. I started to really turn the corner on Walker about a month and a half ago, just because he was just a home run hitter all year long. And when it comes to fantasy, I don't know if you have played enough fantasy football to realize that one big play is really all you need, and one big play is really all Kenneth Walker needs. And he didn't come in here and show off some insane amount of receiving ability that we thought he didn't have, but he actually did. No, this is, again, what we're going to be talking about is cementing what your strengths are and not showing signs of weakness. His hands looked fine, but he ran a 4.3840, came in at 210 pounds at 5'9". He didn't run the cone or the shuttle, but his jumps were solid. All in all, I think we're looking at a situation, not to compare the level of talent, because I do think both of these guys are a little bit better than Breese Hall and Kenneth Walker, but it's like Najee Harris and Javonte Williams, where Javonte Williams was your home run hitter. Obviously, Javonte Williams has much better receiving chops, as we saw throughout his rookie year, and Najee Harris was fantastic down the stretch. But I don't think Breece Hall is that far behind in terms of what he can be viewed as a dynasty asset, say when we're drafting in August or September.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, first off, I totally agree with your Kenneth Walker, and I love the 2-2. But because you compared Breece Hall and Najee Harris, of course, I have to take this off topic and jump on that. The only thing separating those two, in my opinion, is landing spot and draft capital. Let's see where Breece Hall ends up. If Breece Hall goes 25 overall to Buffalo, I don't know if Najee Harris will be better than him. That's all I have to say. However, though, if Breece Hall goes in the late 30s to the 40s and is in a pretty solid offense, I need to check who's picking there off the top of my head. But that could be a different conversation. But in terms of pure talent, I think it's pretty comparable. And I think we're looking at situations right now to separate these guys. Yeah, but I love the Kenneth Walker to Javonte Williams comp.
Yeah, and now we're going to get into some real quick honorable mentions about some guys. I'll keep it real quick. James Cook looked fantastic. Some of the guys projected to go in the later rounds at the tight end position, specifically Isaiah Likely and Greg Dulcich, or Dulick. Sorry if I mispronounced.
Crazy how you traded me Isaiah Likely today in a league when you gave me that 4th round pick. What do you think you were doing there? You think you can get that past me? What else would I possibly want with the 402?
I couldn't think of it. It was a long Monday. I saw 402 and I saw 3rd rounder and I was like, I don't care how many years in the future this is. This is just an objective moving up a draft board.
When Isaiah Likely is a 2027 tight end 17, you're going to be eating your words, let me tell you.
Hey, but a lot of these later tight ends, they look damn good during the combine. A lot of them had much better hands than I was expecting. Peyton Hendershot, one of them as well, displayed some solid hands. There's a few of these guys, specifically Dulick and Likely, that really raised their draft stock and in the right spot could come in and contribute. I saw somebody compare Isaiah Likely to Delanie Walker, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. It makes a ton of sense. I mean, you're talking about 6'4.5", 245. Didn't run the 40, but he ran a fantastic 20-yard shuttle for his size. Greg Dulcich came in 6'4", 240, ran a 4.69 at 240 pounds. I mean, that's no small potato. So shout out to those guys for sure.
Absolutely. I have 2 honorable mentions as well. George Pickens showed up healthy and he showed up athletic. Given a couple guys falling in this class, I've actually had George Pickens rise up slightly in my rankings to the point where I'm going to be comfortable taking him at whatever his rookie ADP really seems to be. Please excuse the parade of fire trucks outside my window. But anyhow, George Pickens is certainly a swing for the fences in rookie drafts. But I think that the risk and reward is going to end up being at a spot that I'm pretty comfortable with either outcome. Additionally, also a shout out to Rachaad White, who also had a really strong combine and is, I think it's safe to say that consensus among the NFL and fantasy community that the top 4 running backs as of today is Breece Hall tier 1, Kenneth Walker tier 2, Isaiah Spiller tier 3, and Rachaad White tier 4. I'd be pretty hard-pressed to find someone who has a huge problem with that. I feel like any argument would be relatively nitpicky or truther type status, personally.
Yeah, I mean, Rachaad White being on the older end of the spectrum is definitely going to hurt his draft capital a little bit, especially for a running back. Some other running backs I wanted to flag. I did very briefly mention James Cook, who ran a 4.42, looked phenomenal.
Sure, about 195, I want to say off the top of my head.
Yeah, 198. And Zonovan Knight also looked fantastic.
Zamir White ran a 4.45. That I did not expect. He looked really slow on tape. That caught me by surprise. I'll probably let a league mate get suckered into that one, But good for him.
I mean, that's kind of one of those things where the 40 doesn't tell as much as the game speed.
Like actually perfect, AJ. Because if you watch Zamir White on tape, like the whole thing I was saying the entire time is like, this dude is slow.
Well, he doesn't have the wiggle. And you kind of
need no wiggle. He has
you need a little bit of wiggle to make it in the NFL.
He's slow behind the tackles. That's a really great way to
have the wiggle, or you need to be built like Leonard Fournette, and he's not.
Leonard Fournette's got a little wiggle, a little bit.
Yeah, it's like veteran.
He's got a little bit of like a nudge.
We'll call it a shoulder check. No,
that's a good way to put it. Yeah, he's got a little of slight lateral movement. Okay, so that's what we got for our winners. Now it's time to talk about some losers, unfortunately.
Just rip into Kyren Williams, bro. Come on.
Well, here's the thing. So I want to rip into Kyren Williams, but then I want to slightly gracefully backtrack to find an even ground. So I'm going to rip into this, dude. So buckle up. If you are here with us right now, listening to a fantasy football podcast in early March, I'm assuming that first off, you have seen the Kyren Williams boisterous nonsense on Twitter of people having him. I heard a couple of analysts have him above Breese Hall, and that was some clickbait type crap if I've ever seen it. I just had to say that. And I have a lot of respect for people who put that out there. They probably don't listen to this anyway, so it shouldn't be ramifications. But if they do, that'd be some awesome Twitter beef because they did put that on the internet. So Kyren Williams was people were in on this dude, getting the Austin Eckler comps, getting the James White comps, who has been an RB2 on multiple occasions, mind you. But then he came into the combine and he was skinny, he was slow, he was weak. He had one of the worst combines we've seen for a running back in a long time. And him and his agent cost themselves millions of dollars this weekend. I can't believe this. I'm very into the gym myself. I track what I eat, and I can put on 2 pounds of muscle in a month like nobody's business. And I'm no athlete like Kyren Williams, let me tell you. So for context, shame on the agent, and I can't believe he didn't show up to this prepared. The only reminder, and this is the graceful backtracking now that I'd like to toss out there, is that there's always a guy who falls every year, but the team that takes him is going to be happy to have him. The NFL team that takes Kyren Williams in the 6th round because his stock is that bad, Kyren Williams is better than a 6th round NFL draft pick. He hurt his stock. That's where he's going to go. Whatever team gets him in the 6th round is going to be really happy they got him there and that they got him that low for such little money. And we need to remember that as we go through our rookie drafts, that the same way with the quarterbacks, the draft capital can't influence it too much. For a guy following, it has to be kind of similar. We know who Kyren Williams is. We've seen him on tape. He's a great blocker. He's a great pass catcher. Those things both translate. And I just really don't think that we should let him fall out of the back end of the 2nd round in rookie drafts. I think once we get beyond there, even with draft capital, even with the combine, it would be kind of like letting Kenny Gainwell go past you last year, which is a mistake I made. And I don't like to make the same mistake twice. So I'm not in on Kyren Williams. I'm not even very high on his NFL draft prospects, but this was a guy who was the running back 4 2 weeks ago. He's going to be my running back 10 coming out. But for me, that's a guy I'm okay taking at the 212. I'm willing to take that shot. So we ripped into him. We backtracked gracefully. AJ, any thoughts on that?
I think you kind of just hit everything right on the head. I mean, I really have nothing else to say. You broke down the flaws of his combine very well, but you also brought up a good point. If you're a pass catching back, it really doesn't matter where you go. If you have the potential to get used, similar to what we saw at Kenny Gainwell, fantastic comp, by the way, then you can't let that type of guy fall down just because he fell to the 5th round.
I saw a really cool tweet actually saying, like, imagine if he went to Vegas and played the James White role next to Josh Jacobs as the between the tackles guy. And like, first off, I want Josh Jacobs to get his targets. But additionally, I was like, wow, like Kyren Williams could be a 5th or a 6th round pick to the Las Vegas Raiders. Makes a whole lot of sense to me. So just something to think about. Like, absolutely rip this guy a new one. you should not consider him in the first round of your rookie drafts or even in the top half of the second. But before you call a shot on a guy, like I'm just looking at these rankings right now, I love Abram Smith out of Baylor. I love this guy. We didn't need to talk about him too much because he had a fine combine. There wasn't too much of note.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if I'm willing to take my shot on a more obscure player when this guy clearly has been having a tough go with things. Just something to think about.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that's a very good point, is you can't let the combine fully dictate everything you do.
And speaking of weigh-ins, can you talk to me about this guy? Because I think this guy, it wasn't that he performed poorly. It was kind of similar to Kyron where he showed up undersized, yes?
Yeah. Wandel Robinson checked in at 5'8". And I don't like to be heightist. We've seen Darren Sproles succeed. We've seen our fair share of short players succeed in the NFL.
Name 5 more.
Over height. Always. But if you remove Tyreek Hill from the equation of really short receivers or receivers under 5'9", because he is an anomaly that cannot be compared to a guy that won't even be drafted in the first 40 picks of the NFL draft, the only fantasy relevant receiver in recent memory is Jamison Crowder. And there's nothing wrong with taking a guy who puts a similar fantasy career to Jamison Crowder.
Jamison Crowder has been a starter in many a lineup before.
In the middle of at the 204 or the 205, that's fine. But that's the only comp. So that's like what we think he might be able to be. And if we think he might be able to be Jamison Crowder, obviously, physically, he's a little bit more of a field stretcher than Jamison Crowder, but the 5'8" is a really big red flag. And as much as we talk about, don't let the combine sway you too much, that height against an NFL corner, even CB2s in the NFL will push this guy around. They will make his life very difficult. He will be going over the middle, and a Tremaine Edmonds or a Devin Bush could it's one hit, man. It's a small player. He's going to have a hard time competing for anything contested. He's really going to have to make sure that his routes are flawless at his pro day, because honestly, without any other game-breaking physical attributes, I mean, came in at under 180, ran a 4.44, which was slower than a lot of bigger, better name receivers. Didn't have a great vertical jump, had a pretty terrible broad jump at 118. It's going to be really interesting to see where he goes in the NFL draft, because I really do think this 5'8" measuring is going to hurt his stock quite a bit.
I'm happy you finished with that, because all the analysis you just gave was great and true. But the important thing isn't whether you or I think that, whether it's true or not. The question at hand is, are NFL teams going to be worried about him going up against CB2s? And I think the answer, like you analyze, is going to be yes. I think this is going to hurt Wandel's draft stock, which will unfortunately hurt his ability to get snaps on the field in training camp and snaps on the field. He will need to be a lot better than expected than even, for example, a guy like Jahan Dotson, who also weighs 178 pounds, but Dotson is 2.5. Yes, they gave him that 5'10.5", 2.5 inches taller. He won't have that same issue against these corners, even some CB1s, because of these 2.5 inches. It's unfair. I know it's the way that God just made us, but it is what it is. This measurement will hurt his draft stock. So I'm right there with you, AJ.
Yeah. Talk about a guy who kind of has the measurables, but he attended. You said it very well before we started recording. Breese Hall showed up to the combine. This guy attended the combine, and that's pretty much about it.
Breese Hall showed up to the combine.
We'll just title this one the Breese Hall episode, by the way. And we'll title this one the Breese Hall episode, and then I'll just put combine reactions in like brackets on the side or something.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So, like I said, Breese Hall showed up to the combine. Treylon Burks attended. In reality, Treylon Burks was actually as advertised. He had one of the better weight-adjusted speed scores. He was very athletic. He looked very smooth in pass-catching drills. He's great. He is absolutely a top 4 receiver in the NFL class, and given his size speed breakdown, should probably be in consideration for a top 3 rookie pick in your class. 100%. But the same way how Breese Hall was not separated from the pack before this. People had Kenneth Walker. People had Isaiah Spiller. Breese Hall comes in and pretty much coronates himself. Says, I'm the king of this draft class. I'm the RB1. I'm the first-round pick. And Treylon Burks, a guy that people were really hoping could be the wide receiver 1 in this draft class, mostly from fantasy circles. The NFL's pretty consistently had London or Wilson ahead of him. But there's been some people who are in on Burks. Burks was in on that wide receiver 1 conversation. Treylon Burks didn't come in and crown himself king. He did everything that was expected of him. He had a Jahan Dotson-esque combine, which is fine. But the difference, though, is that no one was looking for Jahan Dotson to come in and name himself the wide receiver 1 of the class. Treylon Burks had an opportunity. If he comes in here, he runs this 4.4. He jumps 36 inches. He makes one-handed grabs in like passing drills with terrible errant throws from Carson Strong. And next thing you know, Treylon Burks is the 101, not Breese Hall. But that wasn't what happened. And Treylon Burks missed an opportunity this weekend. Before the class, I told AJ that I have the 3 wide receivers at the top pretty comparable. And it would have been nice if I could have changed that I didn't view Burks, Wilson, London, and to a lesser extent, if you want to get spicy, Jameson Williams as similar prospects. But unfortunately, my mind is left unchanged.
Yeah, and he had to come in and change people's minds because what Treylon Burks is known for, he's not Garrett Wilson. He's not running the silkiest routes in all of college football. He's not got these glue hands that some of these other guys have. Drake London, who I personally think has much better hands. His claim to fame was that he was bigger. He looked bigger, faster, and stronger than everybody he went up against.
Well, in addition, though, he's a great receiver, to be fair. Like, he absolutely torched Alabama, which is something that, of course, we look for. Like, I'm not out on Treylon Burks. He could be a dynasty wide receiver 1. 100%. He could be a top 8 dynasty wide receiver for all I know. But he had an opportunity to come in and confirm this. And because he did not confirm this, I have him as a slight loser.
So in terms of his physical profile, the 2 big comparisons that I've seen are A.J. Brown and N'Keal Harry. He was slower and had a worse vertical jump than the both of them. Obviously, A.J. Brown and N'Keal Harry have had very different careers, are very different receivers. One of them is an absolute dog, and the other one is N'Keal Harry.
A glorified fullback.
More or less. But to come in maybe only at 6'2", a 4.55 is not fantastic. I get the weight-adjusted speed score really does play into that.
It wasn't bad. He was, I believe, the 6th fastest wide receiver with weight-adjusted speed score, which isn't terrible.
No, like, it's not terrible at all.
Good he's really good. If Treylon Burks is on your team, you should be excited about it.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And if he's there in at the 2nd or 3rd pick, you're probably going to end up taking him. I'm just saying, this combine was supposed to silence all the questions, and it didn't really silence any of the questions. And that's
they're lingering. They're here. AJ, so I want to pose a question to you as we transition to our last player from today's discussion. Do you think Treylon Burks would have been better off going the route that your other slight combine loser went and not run the 40-yard dash?
I don't know, because when you don't run the 40 or you don't do certain things, yeah, whatever. You're going to do them at your pro day. You're going to do it on your home turf. You'll probably put up slightly better numbers. But it is a red flag that you are kind of like weaseling your way to get the best numbers possible. Drake London, for example, came in at around 220-ish, then doesn't run any of the drills. So he basically came, weighed in, said, hey, I'm not that frail. And then at his pro day, there's a very realistic possibility that he comes in weighing 210, looking like Speedy Gonzalez, and everybody falls in love with him. But you can really pick and choose that type of thing. So shout out to the guys that come in and they do all these drills.
Fair enough. So we're gonna rip into this guy though, because he didn't come in and do any of the drills.
Exactly. And this is my problem with Isaiah Spiller. He opted not to run the 40-yard dash. His vertical jump was awful. His broad jump was awful. He's 6 foot, 217 pounds, and his measurables haven't been an issue in the past. So it's not like his red flags are he's too slow, whatever. he just didn't look that good. I watched a good amount of what he was doing at the combine. He was running really upright, which if you're running at 6 foot, you better be pretty low to the ground when you're getting off the line of scrimmage, because you need to lower your center of gravity to really hit the hole properly. And he really had a few bad drops. And this is a guy that people were touting him, hey, this guy could be a 3-down back right away, depending on.
He was in the Breese Hall conversation. He was in the Breese Hall conversation. Look what happened. Breese Hall's here and Isaiah Spiller's here. That's what happened.
That's exactly what happened. Isaiah Spiller did absolutely nothing to increase his stock. He just looked a lot less polished than I anticipated. And I think he's really going to need to have a spectacular pro day and show a little bit more of the explosiveness he showed at A&M to breach that. I mean, Hall is now way over the moon on these guys. But to even
top
get
3 dynasty back. No, he's not a top 3 dynasty back. Not yet. Maybe, but probably not. I can hope.
We'll see, man. That might not be the craziest take. We'll see what happens.
Well, wait, I did not make that take.
No.
I want that to be clear. I don't want these receipts. I'm not willing to risk it.
That's fair. But even for a guy like Kenneth Walker, he didn't close the gap when Kenneth Walker did every single drill and looked very good doing it. So to opt out and to not put your best foot forward in the more translatable things like catching the football and running through the cones, all in all, it doesn't bode very well. And now when you're looking at rookie drafts, there's a lot more of a possibility that you're taking Isaiah Spiller at 106 than you are at 102. And people were not ready to admit that, say, even 2-3 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Isaiah Spiller, I'd even wondered if he's going to go lower. We're going to see with draft capital, if 6 receivers go in the first round and you take Breese and Kenneth Walker, are you going to take Isaiah Spiller in the 3rd round over, say, I don't know, a Chris Olave who gets first round draft capital? We don't know. These are questions that you're going to have to ask yourself.
Okay. We don't talk about Chris Olave.
There was a reason why I didn't ask you to answer the question, AJ. But these are the kinds of questions that we're going to have to be asking ourselves. We're going to be working on some rookie mocks coming up soon. And additionally, also, one thing to note is that, unfortunately, given the fact that NFL players and their worth are always changing, like these guys are like these rankings we have now, they're great, but then once we see draft capital and landing spot, we're going to have to adjust them again. So it's just something to remember that this is fluid. This is a conversation. It's why we're not attributing pretty much any spots to anyone except for the 101. We're talking these things through, and there's a lot more changes to come.
Yeah, but it was really great breaking down the combine. And I do want to thank you guys for listening. I know this is a pretty beefy episode, but for our Dynasty aficionados, I feel like we definitely covered a lot of important names. Feel free to let us know on Twitter if we missed anybody or you want to shoot the breeze about some of these prospects at AJ the Pylon Don, at Ben the Pylon Don, at Pylon Dons on Twitter, and at the Pylon Dons on Instagram. So,
and shout out Verse Gaming.
Shout out Verse Gaming. Take the house out of your bets with Verse. Make sure you check them out as well. We will be dropping the link to their socials as well in the YouTube description and in the podcast description on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So thank you guys for tuning in. Ben, do you have any parting words?
Dude, I'm exhausted. It's dinner time. Have a good night, everybody.
I'm going to go watch Breese Hall highlights. Have a good night.